Talk about today is two parables on prayer. We look at Luke 18, Luke chapter 18, 1 through 14. We're going to look at the words of the Master, where we look at all of the things that Yeshua himself said and the situations that caused him to speak. And so if we look at Luke, so we'll just go ahead and read through it first. Luke 18, and we'll read 1 through 14.
All right, Luke 18, verse 1. And he spoke a parable to them that they should always pray and not lose heart, saying, in a certain city there was a certain judge, not fearing Elohim nor regarding man. And a widow was in that city. And she came to him, saying, do right to me on my adversary. And he would not for a while. But after he said within himself, even if I do not fear Elohim nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I shall do right to her, lest by her continual coming she wears me out. And the master said, hear what the unrighteous judge said. And shall Elohim not do right by all means to his own chosen ones who are crying out day and night to him and being patient over them? I say to you that he shall do right to them speedily, but when the Son of Adam comes, he shall find the belief of the belief on the earth. Shall he find the belief on the earth? He also spoke this parable to some who relied on themselves that they were righteous and looking down on others. Two men were up in the sent up to the set apart place to pray. The one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and began to pray, but then with himself this way, Elohim, I thank you that I am not like the rest of men, swindlers, unrighteous, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give my tithes of all that I acquire. But the tax collector, standing at a distance, would not even raise his eyes to the heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, Elohim, show favor unto me, a sinner. I say to you, this man went down to the house, declared right, rather than the other. For everyone who is exalting himself shall be humbled, and he who is humbling himself shall be exalted.
Okay, very good. So, when we look at this, a few things I want to kind of point out. We go all the way back to the first verse. We see that it says that he spoke a parable to them. To them. He's talking, of course, to his disciples. And he wants to, he's getting at the place where he's dealing with his disciples and kind of readying them for a time when he won't be there. He just got finished talking about kind of, when we looked at the idea of the two in the field and the one is taken, and all of these things of Yeshua's return, but he got to go away before that he can return. And so the disciples are living they're kind of living in a world that's not real. Right? Because, the people, the onlookers look at them and say, our people, they fast all the time. Your people, they don't never be fasting. But this is like a part of life. I'm saying of spiritual life. But it's because they're walking and dwelling and living with the Master Yeshua. And so, but a time is coming. A time is coming for them when the necessity to do the things that they not necessarily always doing now, when he's not there, and especially them, because of the fact that all of the things that they're going to be going through, as a result of being connected to Yeshua, if they aren't able to prepare themselves, he's saying that you actually will lose heart. So he's saying to his disciples that you should always pray and not lose heart. The way that you don't lose heart is that you always pray. And it's important for him to say this to them because, again, they are going to find out real fast what life without Yeshua there physically is going to be. It's interesting. We looked at the words that he was speaking last week. There's going to come a time. There's going to come a time. Let's see exactly what he says. Hold on. Let's see. Let's see. What was that? Luke 17. It was a previous chapter. Let's see what verse. Oh, 22. Verse 22.
Luke 17:22. And he said to the top ones, days shall come when you shall long to see one of the days of the Son of Adam, but you shall not see it.
Okay, so there's going to be a time when they're going to wish that they actually was able to look at physically Yeshua. When they'll be able to reach out and physically touch Yeshua. And so here in 18, he speaks to them this parable that they should always pray and not lose heart. Let's go to that first verse there, 18 verse 1. I want to look at that lose heart there. Shall not faint. Weak, fail in heart, be weary. That's really the opposite of faith. That's really the opposite of faith. Right? To faint and to grow weary. Right? Always pray and not lose faith, heart, lose heart. But not faint, right? He really could have said to always pray and not lose faith. Because to faint, to become weak, to fail is the opposite of faith. And the way to ensure that is to, in fact, always pray. Always be in connection to. It's interesting because they're always in connection to Yeshua. And so really they didn't even really have to pray. Because they could just talk to Yeshua right there. If you speak to me, you speak to the Father. They literally spent every waking hour with Yeshua. And so from that respect, it's kind of emulating what your prayer life would be and what is necessary to not faint or to lose faith. And so it's interesting when that's where he begins that he goes into these particular two parables. And so when we look at verse 2 here, first of all, it's like unto the when it's interesting when we see this thing that it does here, when it says a certain city, right? It's just some unknown place. It's just totally like, it's either unknown or unnecessary. In this case, it's a parable, and so, it doesn't matter which place it is. But I think that is interesting when we think about this here, because it's giving you this certain city and this certain judge. One of the things that I think is interesting about this thing is that it's just a judge singular. It's a certain city and it's a singular judge. Not only that is just a singular judge, but it's a singular judge that it specifically say he don't fear Elohim, nor regards man. And so it's right to say that it's a wicked judge. He's wicked. He don't fear Elohim, and he don't regard man. It's interesting when we think about the Israel at this time, kind of how they operated. We go all the way back to the Torah, right before the Most High gives the Ten Commandments to the people. We see the command for judges and counselors. In the same Torah portion, by the way, Yithro, the commands to appoint counselors and judges. And so they came up with a system of, in their various locations, the nation had the great Sanhedrin, which was the 71 judges. Go to Numbers 17, 16, and 17.
Number 17?
Excuse me, 11.
Numbers.
11, 16, and 17.
Oh.
Okay.
Numbers chapter 11, verses 16.
Numbers 11:16. And Yahweh said to Moshe, gather me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of appointment, and let them stand there with you. And I shall come down and speak with you there, and shall take of the spirit that is on you, and put it on them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you do not bear it yourself alone.
And so when we think about the time of Yeshua, they had this number, this 71 judges, the Sanhedrin. 71 because they had 70 and then plus Moses. And they also wanted to have this odd number so they wouldn't have gridlocks with their decisions and things. So they had the idea of the 71 judges. And then a place, they also had minor courts that would have a minimum of 3 judges based on the fact that every thing would be determined by 2 or 3 witnesses. They wouldn't have 2 because 2 people could say, I want it this way, and the other one say, I want it that way. So you would have a third one just so to say, well, it should be this way or that way. And so the idea was there were courts of judges, and the minimum was 3. And so when we look over here in this certain city, there was a certain judge, just one guy. And he didn't fear Yahweh, and he didn't regard man. And so when you look at the culture, you know, he's all the way outside of that idea in terms of, you know, this guy who he don't regard Elohim, he don't regard man. He's obviously wicked. He don't align himself with the customs of the people. And so within the rabbinic writings, what they would say is that if someone, typically 3 judges was the minimum, but if somebody decided to allow one judge to rule over their situation, then that's fine if they decided to do that.
If they had consensus on that. Over majority rules.
Y'all know how that is. Found out.
What they're saying is the individuals who put themselves under that judgment, they accept that judgment even though it's outside of the cultural standard, which was minimum of 3. And so we kind of see this with this widow. She wants justice. She goes to this certain judge. He is not favorable towards her. And then she just keeps going back and keeps going and keeps returning. And so it's interesting when you look at, you know, her actions. You know, she has put herself under this, you know, whatever, to go along with whatever it is that this particular judge rules. But being unhappy with the ruling, she returns and wants a retrial, I guess you could say, with the thing. And so it's interesting that Yeshua is giving this as an example, because even a wicked judge, even this judge who is not regarding man, which when you think about judgment, it's not a respecter of persons, but the purpose of it is in fact justice and equity. Like the purpose of it is to ensure that, you know, that right ruling happens. And so even when you think about the idea of judge, like the word judge is about right ruling. And so when you think about this wicked judge, this judge who doesn't fear Elohim, even that one, when you go before him repeatedly, as this widow did, even he is able to have grace towards her. And so how much more so, what it says in verse shall Elohim not do right by all means to his own chosen ones who are crying out day and night to him and being patient over them. And so again, Yeshua is saying this in the context of we are to always go and take our petitions before him continually. And expecting for him expecting for the things that we're petitioning to be made so. And also, when you think about the fact that sometimes you ask for things and you don't necessarily get all the things that you're asking for. But we have to think about the fact that when Yeshua talks to his disciples, and we think about the idea of, not my will, but thy will. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. As it is in heaven, so shall it be in earth. And so when we align ourselves with the Most High in such a way that even the things that we take before him are in his will, and then, you receive those things. He obviously is not going to grant things outside of his will, but we really are supposed to align ourselves with his will, so much so that when we go before him, he is happily granting those things for us, which I think is part of this idea of not fainting, right? And so in verse 8, I think, here, can you read verse 8 again?
Verse 8, I say to you that he shall do right to them speedily, but when the Son of Adam comes, he shall find the belief on the earth.
Shall he find
sorry,
faith
my bad.
on the earth?
Shall he?
And so again, when we look at verse 8 and compare verse 8 with verse 1, again, so as they're kind of opposites here. Always pray and not lose heart, not grow weary. But when we look at faith, again, here, pull that up, faith there, faith. Belief. Persuasion, credence, conviction. All the way down at the bottom, assurance, faith, fidelity. Look at this root. Look at the root there, 3982. So when you think about this root here, to convince, but when we think about faith, it's one that has been convinced, right? And so the word there can mean, this word means agree, right? But this idea of the word pistis here is one that has been brought to agreement. Right, to have confidence, to be content. You've actually been brought to the state of contentment. Right, to persuade, or in this case, to be brought to that state of persuasion. And so it's interesting when we look at verse 8 where it says, when the Son of Man comes, he says in the question, shall you find those that have been brought to persuasion on the earth? The reason that he wouldn't find those is because they wasn't connected to the Most High. They weren't connected to the Almighty through Yeshua, and they actually lost heart or faith. Right? If you're persuaded of a thing, nobody can come around and unpersuade you. Unless you really wasn't persuaded to begin with. Unless you wasn't really connected to begin with. So he's saying in verse 1, you need to always stay connected to the Most High through communion. When you think about, when you go back to the sacrificial system, it was about communing with the Most High. It was a picture, really, of, you know, a relationship with the Almighty. Like, you always want to be in constant communication with the Most High. And that's how you stay persuaded. That's how you stay convinced that he is who he says that he is. When you lose that connection, you lose heart, you lose faith. And he's saying that it's a possibility. When the Son of Man comes, is he going to find faith on the earth? Is he going to find those that are fully persuaded? That have full assurance in what it is that Yeshua started and initiated here? He'll speedily do right by those who maintain that connection. But if that connection becomes lost, they might have any thoughts? Questions?
I just got back in the room, so I don't know if you already answered this. Because someone was talking to me about feeling spiritually lost and disconnected.
Somebody who is a proclaimed believer in Yeshua?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
go ahead.
So they're in the faith, and they're just feeling disconnected, just lost. Just so many things in life, they just felt lost and disconnected. And I was, just telling her to just, stay, steadfast in prayer. And, she was saying that she was doing that, but even in prayer, she was feeling like a disconnect, like she wasn't, connected. So, what could I say to someone that?
Does this person fellowship?
Excuse me?
Does this person fellowship with, or do they stay isolated to themselves?
Isolated.
Okay. All right, so that's kind of gets back to what your previous question, because, we are a nation of people. And when you think about the Shabbat, you rest, you agree with the Most High when he said, this is the day that is set apart. Like Yeshua, the Most High made the day holy. Like, we don't make it holy. He made it holy. We acknowledge that it is holy because he made it holy, and we step into the holiness. But not only that, but we are commanded, it says, to come together with one another. And so this whole thing ain't about you by yourself and your personal Elohim. It's about a collective people together. And so, we are here to be able to encourage one another. But if you ain't here with me, then I can't encourage you. Right? Like, and you can't encourage me. We need one another. When Paul talks about the body and says, there's a foot and there's a hand and there's an eye and there's an ear. One person don't got all of the things. And so you need other people to be able to come around. He made us to be social beings. We were just talking about this just the other day. When you go to prison and you're in prison, you're in the worst place you could possibly be in. But when you're bad in there, they put you to be by yourself, in isolation by yourself. Right. And then you go crazy because we're not made to be isolated. And so you know, I would say that what they're feeling don't necessarily have anything to do with a disconnection from the Most High. If they truly pray to the Most High, if they truly have a connection to the Most High, that's not the thing that they're feeling. I wouldn't say. I would say they have a separation from. They're separated from people,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that you're feeling.
Yeah.
If they're truly, if they're truly in communion with the Most High, and they still feel like they're not, that's what I would say.
They make you feel love.
I mean, because we're physical people. You know, it's interesting that Yeshua, he speaks to this. Because when he goes away, his disciples are going to have his spirit on the inside of him. But he said that you're still, they're the first ones to get the Ruach HaKodesh. But he said, when I'm gone, you're gonna long for the days when I was physically there with you. He's literally talking about what you just asking right now about physical. We need physicalness with us. We need that because he's talking to his disciples. Those are the trailblazers.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that they got the spirit first, and they was going around and preaching the gospel and doing the works that Yeshua did.
Yeah.
But he said there's going to come a time when you going to long for my physical body, and it's not going to be there. Like, we need one another. We wasn't created to be islands unto ourselves. So you tell that person she need to get off of her bed and walk. She need to go get with some people.
Yeah.
And hug somebody and let somebody hug her or him. I didn't hear what you said. Or whoever.
Because also too, it was a judgment when you broke the command. Yeah, to be cast out, to be away from the Most High's people. So if you gonna automatically cast yourself away, you're away from a body.
That's some words right there. You placing yourself under a curse by putting yourself in isolation.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta.
That was a literal judgment.
Yeah, that's you judge you.
Oh man, you
judging
got leprosy.
yourself.
Get out of here.
Yeah, you don't
Get
want to
outta
be
here.
away from the people. You need to find the people,
Find someone.
find your people, and connect. Also, too, like if you send the spirit back to flow through us, you say you praying for the spirit, but it has to flow. It's just gonna flow through you and stop. It's supposed to come through us and we flow out on each other. That's how it's supposed to go. It ain't just supposed to stop at you. And when you separate yourself, how the spirit gonna flow?
Okay.
Like if it's a body, you need all the pieces for the body to work. You break your veins, you gonna bleed out. If it ain't intact, and that's the same thing with a body. It needs to be so it all flows.
When you have like a hemorrhage, right? All of the blood goes to one spot. It gets too much in that spot and it busts. Right? That's a hemorrhage. Like that's what a stroke is. You die if it's in your brain, right?
Yeah.
But that's just a whole bunch of life fluid going to one section and getting so big that it bursts. Right? So what's the difference? What's the difference? Like the Most High, he fills us with something to use.
Yeah.
And so if he giving you a whole bunch of something and you ain't using it, you like a hoarder. Right? What's the difference? Like hoarders, they collect things that they like. They're good things, but like it's bad to be a hoarder.
Yeah, it's like
you a
doing nothing with it.
glutton.
Yeah.
Can you be a glutton for the Most High? I think you can because he wants you. He's giving you something to use. It's just like the man with the talents. You receive that thing from the master, and then you took the thing and you buried it. You didn't do nothing with it. He gave us a seed, and then you didn't plant the seed. You didn't do nothing with the thing that he gave you. You supposed to multiply the thing that he gave you. And so you're not functioning in a way that he created for you to be functioning in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying like people like that, they should be brought into correction, because it's not even like it's like it's like on the edge of like of disobedience.
Yeah.
Like there's a thing that's off the path when you have this thing with I just gotta just be isolated.
Yeah.
Because then you come up with your own ideas and there's nobody to say, well, hold on a second. What about this thing? What about this thing? When you come up with your own ideas, everybody's not right about everything. Even me. Guess what? I don't know everything. I'm wrong a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I need somebody to say, hold on, but what about this thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right about that.
That too, yeah.
But if you're by yourself and you got nobody to bring you back on track, you're gonna veer off. And so we need one another.
We do.
We need one another.
You mentioned the point where you said where she was even praying and she felt like she was not even connected. That sounds like a spirit on her, like the adverse spirit, that's keeping her. And so you can try to fight it all you want, but it's only certain ways to get certain spirits off you. You need a body sometime to get it off you. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can't believe that the Ruach HaKodesh ain't saying go get with some people. Like I can't believe it.
Or she fighting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to add. So we were fellowshipping around, and I know the longer you do it, the more and more you don't want to do it. If there's something that we're like, we'll find a reason why, and then something will come up. Like, it's just, you gotta tell them, like, you gotta get out. Because the longer you sit, you're just never gonna want to get out. You're gonna find something wrong wherever you go. Like, just get out and have mercy on others and, just all the things.
Yeah.
From the beginning of time, when Adam was created, what did Elohim say? It's not good for man to be alone. Because there was a time where Adam was probably walking around moping. He said, this ain't good.
It literally says that. It literally says that. He looked at like he comes to that realization by looking at even the animals got a mate.
Right?
He's seen other things in creation and they all have counterparts.
Yeah.
Where's mine at? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna add that I was just texting Teresa and Naomi, I think like Tuesday or Wednesday, just being out in the world, just that short amount of time since last Sabbath. I was like, I can't wait until Saturday to fellowship with like-minded individuals, because it's just so gruesome out there. Everybody's writing their own mind, and the culture of today is my truth, whatever philosophy people can come up with. Knowing that I have the Sabbath and a time to fellowship, and knowing that we can all be on one accord is truly my favorite time of the week.
Yeah.
It truly is, and it's like if you're not getting that break or that rest in Him through a holy convocation, it makes sense as to why you're not right mentally and spiritually.
Yeah.
I mean, people are interesting. And when I say interesting, I probably mean some other word.
I was coming up with some other words too. If you said it.
But
I think I'm interesting.
but many
Not
times,
that category.
people will say that the Most High is telling me to do this.
Oh, yeah, they do.
The Most High is telling me to do this.
But they do.
And sometimes people use that, for, and like a trump card. Not Donald Trump, but like Trump, like, like the big joker.
Yeah.
The thing that can't be beat.
Yeah. You can't go against it.
Yeah, you can't beat this thing. So when I say the Most High said, that's my trump card, and it can't be beat. And oftentimes when people say that, you might say, well, okay, there's nothing else I can say. But depending on one's relationship, you might say, no, he didn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, he did not say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, he did not say that. You lying.
You've been deceived.
And I think sometimes, depending on the relationship that you have to tell people when they are in error.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when you do that, it don't feel nice.
Right.
But either that person that you're talking about is perfect or they're not perfect. You know what I mean? If you can't be corrected, then you must be perfect. But if you're not perfect, then there's something that you could do different than what you're doing currently. And so, when we look at Yeshua is preparing his disciples so that they're able to make it. And the thing that he's telling them is, a real connection to the Most High is important. Always pray. And I'm saying if you're truly doing that, the results ain't going to be flaky results. They're going to be true, real results. They're going to be things that's going to get you to the place where you're supposed to be at. You know a tree by its fruit.
That's right.
Right? If a good tree gonna have good fruit every time. And so, sometimes, I'm saying that sometimes you just have to call people out on their things. And then, sometimes you gotta just don't care about, I'm just saying, in my opinion, I'll put that as a disclaimer. I'm saying that sometimes you just gotta not care about what's gonna happen afterwards, because we can't be the ones that do all of the things. You could plant a seed and you could water, but the Most High is the one who's gonna make the growth happen. And so sometimes the only thing you could do is just say the hard thing.
Yeah.
And then if it's so hard for that person, they might just not even mess with you no more.
Have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? That's why it's in there. That's why it's in there.
That sounds like a speech right there. I become your enemy.
Yeah.
I told you.
And that's how you gotta look at it. Look, you can set it up and be like, look, I love you, but from what I'm hearing, this is what I think you need to hear.
Diagnosis.
There you go. Yeah, from what, where I'm at in my walk, this is what I think you need to hear. And, it's out of love, and leave it at that. They can take it or leave it, because that's how it has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a necessary thing. Because, that's what Yeshua is doing right here. He's preparing his disciples for hard times that are coming. And so, you know, we can do the same thing. Like hard times are coming. We wasn't meant to be alone. We're meant to be with people. When you putting yourself in isolation, you putting yourself under a curse.
Yep. You are. Just, no, it's the verse talking about faith comes by what? Hearing. And if you ain't got nobody to hear, then you losing faith. How could your faith, if you don't got the power to, it's clearly the strength of your own faith, you need to be around other people who got faith to strengthen yours. Go ahead.
And I do want to add I think it's in Ephesians, I think where it says it's the time for everything. Maybe it's wrong book, but I do think sometimes there is a time for isolation, but it can't be like a permanent thing. Like you have to know that there is a time to maybe be to yourself, but then there's also a time to gather. So you can't stay in that state forever. Because depending on what you're coming out of, you need to get away. But not to say get away from the body, but maybe
Time
get
out.
away from the world. Like if there's something going on and you're like Sunday through Friday life, yeah, you might need to isolate from them, but when it does come time to like gather on the Sabbath, like you should make that a priority.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the
absolutely.
main
Like
thing.
what you said. Like, I mean, if the he said to have a holy convocation. So if I'm gonna isolate, I got 6 days that I can isolate. All right.
Yeah,
I got
right.
6 days that
You
I
do,
can isolate.
yeah.
But the seventh day is unto. It's not unto me. It's
Yeah.
unto Yahweh.
Yep.
And so it's not for that. And then if you even take it further, like, you know, Hosea talk about seasons. Wintertime's almost over.
Amen.
So the time for you to be hidden in the dark is almost over.
Daylight savings time is here.
It's almost over. Like if you want to make if you want to make a argument for isolation, wintertime's your isolation time. But it's just for a season, and then you got to come outside.
Yeah.
You got to come outside.
It ain't cold no
Okay,
more.
but we got to keep on going though.
All right.
Because this is, I mean, but all this is all relevant though. Because when we go down, let's go down to verse 9.
Verse 9.
Read 9 and 10 again for us. Sir.
And he also spoke this parable to some who relied on themselves that they were righteous and looking down on others. 2 men went up to the set apart place to pray. The one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector.
Okay, this is very interesting because he tells us, you know, a lot of times, well, he's talking to his disciples, first of all. And so he's giving them the answer to what the thing means because he's talking to his disciples. So he already know that they want to know what the answers are. You know, he said that he's spoken parables to confuse the non-believers. But if he's talking to his disciples, he could go ahead and say, well, I'm going to talk to you about this. What I'm about to say got to do with people who is self-righteous and look down on other people. All right, ready? Here I go. Okay, and so he talks about these two people, the Pharisees, a Pharisee, one man who was a Pharisee, and one man who was a tax collector. So let's talk about these Pharisees for a minute. Go to pull up verse 10 there in the Strong's. These Pharisees, here's some interesting fellows. Hit that, yeah. Pharisee, that word there, Pharisee, it says there of Hebrew origin, it is a separatist, right? It's a set apart tist. these Pharisees. Go to okay, so let's go back to we went to this earlier. Let's go back to Nehemiah.
Was that 11?
8.
Eight.
It was
Oh, 8.
8 and 8.
8 and 8 again. And they read in the book of the Torah of Elohim, translating to give the sense and cause them to understand the reading.
Okay, look at let's see, what's the word there?
In the sense of
Distinctly. To separate, disperse, scattered, show. That word there, parash, is the root for the Pharisees. The Pharisees was the ones that was looking at breaking down the scriptures. They was literally separating the scriptures, separating them for the purposes of understanding. Just like how it says in that verse there in Nehemiah, that they were separating the words, the words of the book, so that they're able to understand what's being read. And so they had a whole lifestyle built around separating the words of the book for life, of separating themselves from unholiness unto holiness. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that, even when we read some of the descendants from the Pharisees, they separate the words, they separate the letters, and then they even separate the parts of the letters.
There's a lot of separating that is done. And so when you look at the Pharisees are what they call the proto-rabbinic, the origins of kind of the rabbinic Judaism, where they're looking at these things and they're taking things all the way apart just so they can understand it and rebuilding it in sometimes strange ways.
They could go too far, huh?
I mean, yes. but that's that is essentially what you dealing with the Pharisees. And so even when you look at the way Yeshua speaks to them, talking about he ties everything. What does it say? Oh, all that I acquire. I give tithes of all that I acquire. Yeshua talked about the disciples, talking about they get some herbs, and then they tithing of the herbs that they get. Like everything that they do is supposed to be dedicated unto the Most High. However, he gives them as an example because he literally says over here, rely on themselves that they are righteous. Mm-hmm. These people were so, quote unquote, righteous. These people separated the words of the Torah so much that whenever the living Torah came and stood right in front of them, they didn't recognize them.
I can imagine them getting like a bag of chips and counting all the chips and then tithing some of the chips.
Yes.
They separatists. That makes sense.
Extreme.
Yeah.
You cut an orange into 10 parts, and then one of the parts goes to the Most High.
Yeah, everything. So they do all of these things unto Yahweh, but at the same time, the righteousness that they're working, quote unquote, is not even righteous. Because Yeshua said, in reference to them, he said they rely on themselves that they were righteous. They rely on, and so look what he said. And this is interesting. Read verse 11 one more time.
The Pharisee stood and began to pray with himself this way: Elohim, I thank you that I am not like the rest of men.
Okay, hold on. He says all of those things, but my thing was he prayed with himself.
I was thinking when he read that, I'm like, pray with himself.
He prays with himself. And so one of the ways that this could be looked at is, yes, of course, he prayed by himself in the place apart from the other guy, the tax collector.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You can look at it that way, where he prays with himself
That was one over here.
in that way. But when you think about, the whole reason why they would have went to the temple to pray was to form a minyan.
He didn't want that guy being in the
The custom was to come together in prayer with at least 10 men.
At least.
But 10 was the minimum. And so one of the things that they go to is, if we go to Genesis 18 and 32.
Genesis 18:32. And he said, let not Yahweh be displeased, and let me speak only this time. Suppose there are found 10. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10.
Okay, very good. So one of the reasons why the custom was to have at least 10 men, the Most High would hear the prayers of 10. And he had a track record of doing so. If you go back to Sodom, he said, if there's 10 righteous men in there, I'll not destroy the place. And so the idea is that of a minyan, there's many, but one of the things is that you would come together with men and pray. And so the Pharisee, he goes to the temple, and there's another guy there,
You don't want to pray with him.
but he don't want to pray with him though. So he prays off to himself. And so one idea is that he physically don't want to be by him. But the way that he's praying, it's almost as if he's praying to himself. Literally. I thank you that I'm not like the rest of these men, these swindlers, and these unrighteous people. And he's comparing himself in his prayers to everyone else, including this other person that's there. And so I thought it was interesting when it talks about here to pray with himself this way. Yes, you could look at it in terms of praying, kind of by himself, but he's literally seemed as if he's almost praying to his own self here.
Sounds like the disconnect that she was talking about.
Yes, very much so. Because they sit around with these people who are so, it's almost as if they get to the place where it's kind of the opposite type of a situation, where they get so caught up in the process of midrash. They're just so into the process of it, and they miss the actual truth of it. And that part is obvious. Yeshua says to the Pharisees, if you read Moses, you read of me. But they missed him because they weren't really studying it the way that they actually should have been seeing it. Now, the people who weren't studied, quote unquote, was the main ones that was seeing and understanding who Yeshua was. And I think part of that is that there was kind of like an intellectual aspect to the whole thing. If you think about like Paul, who was a Pharisee, he was the biggest denier of Messiah that there was. And he didn't come to the realization of who Yeshua was because of study. He came to the realization from Yeshua knocking him down off of his horse and causing him to be blind. Right? It was like this.
He had to like literally kiss his kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Submit it.
And so this idea of these Pharisees is so cerebral. It's not spiritual. The knowledge, the quote unquote knowledge, didn't get the people to where they were supposed to be at. And this one Pharisee, he's manifesting that, right? I mean, he's a terrible person, this guy. Obviously. Like, I just thank you for just not making me like this sorry person that's right over there.
I know, right? Yeah.
That's
him right
terrible.
there.
He's a terrible person, this guy.
Yeah. Instead of praying for him,
Yeah.
that's what he's doing. Exalting himself.
I know.
That's
Did
wild.
you
That's
hear
the
what he
wild part.
said?
Yeah. This guy over here, thank me for not making me like this dude.
That's terrible. He's a terrible person. And then so when it gets to the tax collector, talking about him that's standing off in the distance, he won't even raise his eyes to the heavens, it says. He won't even look towards the heavens. And he's just asking for a favor. He said, I'm a sinner. Because he literally was a sinner. These tax collectors, it's hard for me to think that, and I might sound like a Pharisee. It's hard for me to think of a current tax collector as being righteous, because their job was unrighteous. They literally did unrighteous weights and measures as an occupation.
Yeah.
They literally robbed the people for Rome. They robbed their own people for Rome as an occupation. And it's interesting that the tax collector, he acknowledges his state. I feel like this, for him, this is a point of transition.
Yeah.
The tax collector. He's acknowledging his state, and he's asking for mercy. But the tax collectors, the publicans, they literally... Here, let's look at a couple things. Go over to Leviticus 19 and 13.
19 what?
19 and 13.
Oh.
That's where you
Leviticus, yes.
Leviticus 19:13. Do not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of him who is hired is not to remain with you all night until morning.
Okay. Don't oppress your neighbor nor rob him. The tax collectors oppressed their neighbors and robbed them. They literally did both of those things. The actual job of being a tax collector broke the Torah. Exodus 23:8 says that.
Exodus 23, verse 8. And you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh for 7 days. On the seventh day is a set apart gathering. You do no servile work.
23:8.
Wait. You said Exodus
Oh, that's the wrong verse.
or Leviticus? I'm in Leviticus. My bad. You want that?
Which one?
It should have been 9. It should have been 9.
Is it Leviticus?
Exodus?
Exodus.
Okay.
It should have been 9.
And do not oppress, O sojourner, as you yourselves know the heart of a sojourner, because you were sojourners in the land of Mizraim.
Yes, the idea is oppression. The idea is oppression. And again, when you think about this job, this task that they had, this occupation, it literally was about oppression.
Yeah.
And so, from one perspective, when you think about the tax collector, the way that they were viewed, they literally were terrible people as an occupation.
Yeah.
And the tax collector here is literally acknowledging that himself. And he's begging for favor. But he receives favor. And he's declared righteous, as it says in verse 14. Because, and he says, why everyone who exalts himself shall be humble, but he who is humbling himself shall be exalted. And so when we think about the difference between the two, the one, he's just saying how good and righteous he is and comparing himself to this other person, and the other person don't care nothing about what's going on around him. He's looking at his current situation. He's understanding the state that he's in. He acknowledges where he is and the things that he has done. But he's pleading for mercy. And so when we see pride, when we see this haughtiness that exists inside of the Pharisee, we see the exact opposite when we look over at the tax collector. And it helps us to understand that this is the thing that we need in order to be close to the Most High. We need to have that humbleness, that humility, the rejection of pride and of haughtiness. That's the thing that allows us to be able to draw close to the Almighty. And when we do that, we're able to receive from on high. When we don't do it, we don't receive it. Right? He said this man went down, verse 14, this man went down to his house justified, declared righteous, rather than the other. The other one didn't. Like, he goes in there saying all these things about himself, assuming that he himself is righteous, and saying, I don't want to be like this other person who ain't righteous. But meanwhile, it says over here that he wasn't justified. He wasn't declared right. The tax collector went back to his house justified, declared right. The other, rather than the other didn't. Why? Because of this haughtiness, this pride, right? This arrogance. What does it say in Proverbs 16 and 5?
Proverbs 16 and 5. Everyone proud in heart is an abomination to Yahweh. Hand to hand he goes not unpunished.
It said the proud of heart is an abomination to Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
Like he hates that. What's that word mean, abomination? What that word mean? Go scroll up. Disgusting. Disgusting.
Right.
That's like if something is just like when you look at something and it just is like that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think about what I would even look at and be like, that's disgusting. Like the thing that I can think about is so bad that I don't even want to say what it is that I think about. But I think that's the point though.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
I have to take that.
Yeah, the last time I smelled chitlins was at
Please, why you gotta bring my
at your grandma.
I do not know why you had to bring my people up.
That's the last time I smelled chitlins. And it was, I literally was disgusting. when I lifted the pot off, the lid off of that pot, I was so disgusted. I put that pot down so fast, it wasn't even funny, man. But the idea though that the Most High, he said he's the person who has a proud heart he's disgusted by that.
Yeah.
And so that's what that Pharisee represented to the Most High.
Yeah.
But he was so righteous.
He obviously
He
wasn't.
He had a bag of chips. He counted all of them and gave
None of that meant anything. To the Most High, that person he was disgusting. He was like a pot of chitlins. Disgusting. And so, just kind of just closing down is thinking about the fact that, Yeshua in his preparation in his preparing the disciples, causing them to understand what is necessary for them to be able to maintain that faith and to be able to be firm and steadfast and unwavering, is to be able to continue to, just as they were physically doing, while Yeshua was there with them, leaning on him, to helping them to understand that they're able to still do that while he's gone through prayer and a continual, communications with the Almighty, and a continual bond and connection with the Most High through humility. Because the thing is that the Most High, through Yeshua and the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, literally does cause one to be righteous.
Yeah. It's not him.
But we have to just understand, keep it in its context, is that the righteousness is through what it is that Yeshua has done for us. He's the one that causes us to be righteous. And it's interesting, even in that verse 14, the verbiage that is using there, where it says that he goes down to his house declared right. Declared right. A judicial stamp was placed upon him. He didn't do anything. Even his humility didn't make him right.
It's a decision.
It was on the judge declared him to be right. So his humility just put him in a position to be able to receive that declaration. But it wasn't like the humility was the thing that earned him that. But it was the way in which he approached the Most High that was different from the Pharisee, where he deserved, he deserved this. I'm this and I'm that and I'm so blah blah, right?
Yeah.
But this tax collector, understanding exactly who he was, went to the Most High, exposed and hiding nothing. I am a sinner, a tax. If he would have even said I'm a tax collector, he'd have been saying the same exact thing. Go ahead.
I would just say it's almost like the Pharisee. He's talking about all these points, like I just a little bit, like I do this, I do that, I fast twice a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I give a tenth of everything. I do all of these things, and then it's like the tax collect. It's like a test, and it's like, well, how'd you get here? You know what I mean? The tax collector is, the Pharisee's like, well, how'd you get to this position with the Most High? And he's like, I didn't take the test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the Pharisees acting like it's a test or something.
Yeah. And he's
He's
operating in pride.
Yeah. I've accomplished all of
He's
these.
proudly doing this.
things.
I've done this and I've done that. I have this. And he doesn't have any of these things.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you caused me not to be like this old peasant over here. Right? This lowly so-and-so. Right? But that's pride, though. And so we can't, the Most High is disgusted by pride. His heart, the heart of this Pharisee is just totally hard. Where he needs for us to be able to have that soft, pliable heart that he's able to actually use, and not this hard, kind of rigid thing that's set in its ways, and not able to be shaped and molded into the things that he will have. And so it's interesting when we look at these two examples that Yeshua gives, where he's again helping his disciples to prepare them for this time where it's going to be necessary for them and us to, maintain that connection with the Almighty through prayer, and to kind of be careful not to allow the things that the Most High has blessed us with to cause us to shift focus onto ourselves and away from the Most High where it belongs.
Excuse me.
All right. So, does anybody have any last questions?
I was thinking like, it's a reminder of us, because I think pride is a big issue for a lot, everybody. I think we've all had it at least once. But he hates that. That's I mean, I know when I screw up, mess up, whatever word I'm gonna use, I feel disgusted with myself. Like, you did that again. It would be especially like out when I'm like, like out driving or out with people. I'll be like wanting to go back to my old ways, like, and literally start a fight. Like, where is that coming from? Like, pride or whatever. It's just, but it makes me sick at myself. And I think that's just a little bit of how he feels. You know, he's disgusted with it. So, that's all.
And it's just a reminder that, you know, pride rises up because it's just part of, you know, being a human. It's part of carnality. And it's just a thing that we have to continually mash down. It's gonna rise, it rises up, and you just push it down. Like it's like part of the process, you know. And so when we see the example that that Yeshua gives with, it's interesting because this pride that exists inside of them, it comes from what? It comes from their knowledge of the Torah, of their understanding of who the Most High is.
Knowledge puffeth up.
That's what it say. That's what it say.
He divided so much that puffed him up.
Right, and so, but the thing that we learn from that is that these natural things that occur have to be regulated. Like it's a natural occurrence, but it must be regulated. And it don't go anywhere. It's still there. And so, but we have to be able to be spiritually minded instead of carnally minded. You know, we have to be able to acknowledge what that thing is and keep it at bay.
And the point to what you're saying is slow down. When you slow down in any situation, anything that makes you emotional, and you slow down and really be like, wait, why is this affecting me this way? Then you could think, and then you can really be like, oh, okay, this person cut me off. Just let it go. You know what I mean? If they ain't hit you or whatever, I be seeing people go crazy. And I'm like, he didn't hit you, it wasn't close to hitting you, or I'd just be mad because you're...
No, this guy was on my back. No, he was literally behind me,
Pushing you forward.
A man.
Like not in the car, like
Like right on my back.
No, when
His
you
back, 'cause
drive.
I was like doing what I was supposed to do, like you had to check out at Costco to give me a receipt.
oh, that's kind of wild then.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was real rude. And but I was like, for real, somebody, that's what, that's not beside. Like I was like, yeah.
Nah,
'Cause I was like, you know, like,
I mean,
that's a little too.
Yeah.
I'd have probably. I'd have to speak to him myself.
I mean,
You can be mad, but once
Take
you
a sip of your water, you like,
I'm just saying, like, I mean,
like, what do you want me to do? Like, I had to give the man a receipt. Like, for real, like, oh, you gonna be on the floor.
well, I mean, I guess there is. I guess there is. I'm saying like this. I mean, there's we have boundaries.
exactly.
We have boundaries,
Yeah.
and there's a fence, and you know it's an invisible fence, but it exists, and it should be, you know, in fact, respected.
Right.
And so, you know, it's one thing when we talk about, you know, defense, and just, you know, there's a difference between somebody cutting you off in traffic or jipping you in a line from physical touching.
Yeah.
Right? It's not really the same thing, you know. And so, but the point is that, you know, we have to, you know, pride. We have to be able to understand pride. You know, pride is one thing. You know, somebody crossing a line, you know, sometimes is another thing. And so I'm just saying that we have to be able to understand carnality and the flesh when it rises up and keep it at bay. You know, somebody crossing a boundary, you letting the person know, you know, it's, you know, that's different. Okay, go
I
ahead.
mean, now, I identify with the Pharisee in many respects. I have to say. That's me, just saying. I do, like, there's things that happen and I recognize, like, or my children bring up, like, even this past week, remember Africa, we was in a conversation, a meeting, a joint meeting, actually, multiple people was there, Naomi was there, Ebony was there as well. And, someone had a rebuttal to me. And I was like, and Africa was there with me physically, so she knew my physical response. But then even like a day later, I still was like feeling a certain kind of way.
Yeah, that was pride.
But I didn't put my next
That
card
person
out
didn't
on
know
it.
who you was to say what they
I
said.
didn't let them know who I was. Because I was like, it's not the time or the place.
Yeah.
But I still was like,
Let me just say, let me
I
help
had
you.
that too.
Let me
You know what I'm
just
saying?
say, because there's a difference.
What you talking about?
that's what I wanted to say.
There's-
Like, where are we at in the Bible?
There's many levels to this. There's many levels to this. And one level, the top level, is understanding it,
Yeah.
right? And then the next level below that
That's what.
is not doing anything as a result of it.
Uh-huh.
But the level below that is not even feeling
Yeah.
away. And so you can stop yourself from
I
doing
stop myself.
something, but how about stopping yourself from even feeling like it's necessary to do it? Like, I can stop myself from slapping you, but if I still feel like I need to slap you, then I have a.
That's what I was having.
I have a
before.
problem.
I even said it out loud.
But it's levels to it, and nobody's
Oh,
perfect,
really?
and we grow. You know what I mean? And sometimes, maybe you're just at the level of not doing the act.
Hold on.
And then, but we have to get to the place of not even feeling like the act is necessary.
When Yeshua said, if your brother slap you, you give him the other cheek. I guess if it ain't your brother,
Yeah, I mean,
That was-
I think that sometimes we think about this whole turn the other cheek thing. It's about retribution.
yeah.
Like
going back.
if you sometimes people really are owed something, and they're owed a slap. But you don't necessarily give them the slap necessarily because it's owed to them.
Yeah. Their slap's gonna come because they're gonna.
It's not a literal slap. It's not. Yeshua's not talking about. Yeshua's not literally talking about if somebody comes and slap you, let you turn the cheek so they can slap you the other side. It's
So
about.
somebody slapped you on the cheek.
No, it's about if somebody owes you a thing, sometimes they literally are owed you. Somebody owes you $5, and it's right for you to say, "Man, give me my $5." But sometimes it's just just keep the $5.
Yeah.
It's about retribution. It's not literally about people walking around and slapping people necessarily. There comes a time for justice. Yeshua gave justice.
He did.
When he seen them people over there acting up in the temple, he didn't just say, "Please, will you just stop doing this thing? It's against the Most High." He
Yeah.
was up in there slapping
He
people.
got physical on him.
He
Yeah.
literally got physical with them. And so we have to think about, these things in wisdom. Sometimes it's not necessary to give people everything that they deserve. However, you do let people know, what's right and what isn't right.
Right.
Get up off of me, guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
we're
You
not-
got to.
We're not here for people to just kind of run over top of people. You know what I mean?
Had a gun and just was like, what?
I think there's
always study sessions for your, you know, just repercussions for.
Yeah, people are crazy these days.
So
You
I-
can't
I
just be
should
going
think
out
like
here.
that, Not like.
I wish you would think like that because I try to tell people like, you can't be out here beeping at these people. These crazy people out here.
Yeah.
Like, just don't even worry about these things. You know, control yourself. You know what I mean? Because people out here is just they out of control.
He talked about me because I was beating up people in the parking lots.
You gotta calm down.
I didn't
Yeah,
say
people,
you,
you know what I mean?
exposed yourself, but
Yeah, you gotta
know,
calm
I'm
down.
saying.
We were in the parking lot. beating at them.
Yeah,
He's like, that person could just get out the car and come back over here.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I used to have that little iron rod in the car, but I don't have it.
Trisha ready to fight out here. She ready to go.
Okay, so on that note, we want to just go ahead.
Kind of switching gears a little bit before I stepped out, I was curious about the lesson as in the Pharisee getting a lot of slack for being very, I guess, legalistic. Would that be a little bit overbearing with it. But I know that like people on the outside in consider us to be very much like that, where we adhere to the word for most of our lives. So like, oh, you're taking it so literal. You know, the law's done away with. You don't need to really do all of that. So just like from the perspective of someone who maybe is like watching this live and finds it to be like, oh, that sounds a bit contradicting. Like you're getting on this Pharisee for being so legalistic, but you adhere to the law a lot of your life. Like, what would you say to that person? I know we touched on it a little bit.
Yeah.
That's why I said I identify.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
so-
just for clarity.
So with the Pharisee, it wasn't about legalism for him. It wasn't the fact that he did all of the things. And so people, I think that, you know, it's important to understand, Yeshua said the Pharisees, in regards to the Pharisees, they sit in the seat of Moses and do whatever it is that they say and not what they do. The Pharisees, he was so hard on the Pharisees because they should have known better than they didn't do. The thing that was wrong with the Pharisee wasn't necessarily, it didn't have anything to do with legalism. It had to do with his heart and the fact that he was looking at himself as if he, first of all, that he, the whole point was self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Like he was doing these things, and you know that's the issue. I think it's kind of like it is kind of a fine line, because at one point the Most High calls for us to be doing things, but then sometimes people look at the things, and then kind of look at themselves, and you are now all of a sudden now you're self-righteous because you're doing things.
Right.
But I'm just following the commands. I'm just doing what the Most High said. And, you know, it was interesting. The other week, you know, there was this thing that I was watching, and people began to talk about praying for people that they was calling them wicked. And that they wasn't going to waste their prayers on wicked people. And so now you taking it to that extreme, now you're just like this Pharisee. I'm so glad that you made me special, not like them people. And so meanwhile, but Yeshua, who did all of the things, when he comes, he calls out to the sinner and says to them, repent. And so you don't know what the Most High has planned for this one or that one.
Right.
And so your duty is to call out to that one wherever they are and call them back to repentance. He says over in he said, what is it, chapter 5? He said in Romans, here, read Romans 5 and 8, but read it from the King James, because he says something. That's powerful right
I'm
there.
surprised you was able to find it and you don't have the King James.
Nah, but it's I know what
The
verse
verse is the verse. Yeah. Romans 5:8. But Yahweh commandeth his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
He said he commanded his love toward us. He said he commanded his love towards us while he was yet a sinner. And so that's just like that happened to you. You know, it can happen. It is to happen to everyone else. And so, but where it gets mixed up is that now people want to sit up here and say, well, you know, you doing all of these things, but it's just a misunderstanding. It's a huge misunderstanding because you know we have a situation where people really are kind of New Testament minded. They have New Testament glasses where they can't understand the foundations, and they only looking at something from a quote unquote New Testament point of view. And so I'm not saying that I'm this or that. I'm only saying that the Most High said, do this, and I'm doing that. And so Yeshua said, if Yeshua is calling people from repentance, calling them from sin to repentance, he's looking at what they're doing or not doing and say, stop not doing that and do this. You're only doing what Yeshua said when you say, you know, there's 6 days a week of work and you're supposed to be rest on the Sabbath. Like when you point out sin, you're only doing the same exact thing Yeshua did. It don't got nothing to do with self-righteousness. We're called to call men to repentance. And so when we're looking at that from a literal standpoint, but it sounds funny when, you know, oh, you're righteous. I mean, I don't know what to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the commission that we've been given to call those that are in sin to righteousness.
Right. But otherwise, what's repentance? What is it then?
I don't know what it is. If it's not, I mean, it's turning from sin.
Right.
And so that's what it says. And so if there's something that you're doing that could be classified as sin, that thing, turn from it. I'm not self-righteous by saying, because this is my reality right here. The place that I sit today is a different place from where I sat some years ago. And it's not because of how good I am, but it's because of this love that got commanded towards me. It don't got nothing to do with me and my physical abilities. It got to do with me being like that tax collector and saying, have mercy on me. And so that's our reality. It's an interesting situation that we find ourselves in because we say that we follow one book, and then with mainstream Christianity, there's such a different view of it. But, you know, the only way we reconcile it is understanding that if this is in fact a complete book, then when you look at it in that way, you can't come to these conclusions that you come up with. And so, saying all that just to say, the Pharisee, his issue wasn't that he was doing the things. His issue was the way in which he was perceiving this other person, as if he was some dirty thing that he couldn't even be with. Instead of saying, "Hey, man, come over here and let me talk to you for a minute."
Yeah.
Like, or, you know, let's pray to the Most High together.
Yeah.
Like, and so he was doing the things, but that's all he was doing the things. He still had a wicked heart. And it comes off like that. It comes off like that when you do got it, because you got these people who are doing the things, but it's self-righteousness. Because the spirit of Messiah not going to cause you to sit up here and look at these people a certain kind of way. The spirit of Messiah is going to cause you to look at this person and be like, what do we got to do in order to get you over here? Not, you stay over there with your ham sandwich.
You're too busy crying about your own shit. You ain't even understand what
All right? The spirit of Messiah is about love.
Yeah.
And it's not about pride. Pride is disgusting to the Most High. So it's about gathering. It's not about separating.
Yes.
God.
Yeah, and I think once, like and I'll just say for me personally, when I look at a person, I don't necessarily look like a person, like a worldly person. I don't necessarily look at them and say, oh, they don't do this, or they don't do the feast days, or they eat shrimp, or whatever. I don't look at that. It's like, okay, well, where are you at spiritually? Because it doesn't, you could do all of these things. And then, but you could be so far distant and far removed from the Most High. People are literally in sin. Like, and it's like, it's deeper than, Sabbath and the feast and the eating and if you look at it, and that's why I say when people talk about the Torah, you can really only shoot but so much of the Torah in exile. There's like 7 or 8 commandments that we actually keep out of the 613 commandments. The rest of them are spiritualized.
Exactly.
And so it's like, what are we talking about? Like, you need to stop fornicating. You need to stop committing adultery. You know what I mean? Like, you need to stop stealing. You know what I mean? Like, you need to forgive this person that you have all this hatred and anger towards.
Yep.
And it's just like so many things, that you need to do, and it's like you get so lost when you start talking to them about this stuff that, yeah, they need to know, they need to do those things, but first you need to come to the master.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the only thing that you need to be worried about is introducing somebody to Messiah.
Yes.
Because every Shabbat they'll learn Moses. But do you know Messiah though?
Yeah.
The authentic Messiah, and not this manufactured one that we have, but the authentic Messiah. You can't expect for people to do anything outside of that. And you got a lot of people out here who do all of the things, but they never even had no experience with Messiah. And that's why you see them acting like they do. They saying on Shabbat, they somewhere, acting crazy and bringing the name of my master and dragging it in the mud because they are saying one thing and they're doing something else. And so, it's a lot. it's a lot. But it's an attainable thing.
I just have a good question about that, since we started talking about that. So, when people tell me like, okay, for instance, I was just talking to a neighbor about, she said she walks around and I was just introducing myself to her the first time. And she said, well, here I'm just praying, and I was like, oh, that's so beautiful, we're praying too, it's nice to know that there's other people praying around the neighborhood and whatnot. And I don't push like Sabbath and stuff. I tell people what I do, and because my kids asked her some stuff about taking her Christmas decorations down. She was like, they want to make money.
Oh, they want to make money.
So I was like, yeah, they don't really, know, because she was like, they came too early. I was like, I told them they were coming too early, and I was like, we don't celebrate that stuff. We just keep, what's in the Old Testament. We believe that that's not done away with, and we keep all those days. But I don't sit there and tell people like you're in sin for not doing this, because I believe, especially she's 70-some years old. I believe if she's interested, or if the spirit, she's eventually gonna question me, right or wrong. How do you feel? Because I just don't feel led to do that. Maybe certain people, I just don't feel led. I don't want to use the Trump card on that. But there you go.
Yeah, I think that you gotta. Sometimes you do have to have relationships with people if you expect to. Well, the thing is that okay. There's two answers. Okay, so you can always drop a seed on soil.
She looked at me like I was, you could tell she was ready to.
You can always drop a seed on soil, but I think that sometimes we want to be involved in the whole process when you're not. And so I think that what we have to learn to be able to do is just drop seeds.
Just keep
And pour water too. You can pour water too.
Keep real nice.
You can pour water, you can drop seeds.
If they do
But expecting something to happen as a result of that it's not on you. You can only do all that you can do. And so I think that when we think about what we're called to do, we are called to do. We're called to preach the gospel. And you know, if you back me up into a corner and you force me to give a response, there's the 10 Commandments. The 4th commandment is Shabbat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, if you ask me, that's a sin, right? If you back me into a corner, I'll tell you that. And so, but I think there's a way that you do a thing that, I think there's wisdom has to be involved in it. And I think the idea of causing people to be able to acknowledge what sin is could be more profitable than you pointing it out to them, because you probably gonna end up looking like some self-righteous person.
It's like that is.
And so it's interesting the way that sometimes we have to kind of work around things. But as I'm even saying it, is that because I want to have a particular result, or you know what I mean? So I guess at the end of the day, you just gotta say what you gotta say. You know what I mean? Because it ain't you that's doing it anyway. It's the Most High. And so, it's kind of a hard thing, because you wanna enter into a situation and know that it meant something, but sometimes you ain't gonna know if it did or if it didn't.
You don't think it's wrong for doing that? Because, I mean, ultimately, I do want a safe place if they ever do want to have a question about it, for them to come to. Is that wrong?
I mean, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but what I'm saying is that we put expectations on the result and feel like if you wasn't involved in getting the person from A to B, then the whole thing was a failure. And that's not the case. Because you a failure if you didn't ever put the seed in the dirt. We're soil. The seed, that word is the seed, is the word. Now, we want to put the seed in and then see the results, and then know that's some things.
Stop it.
And so, but you win whenever you plant the seed, and then so I'm saying that. But you lose when you don't plant the seed. And so we want to see the results, and then because we may think that you're not going to see the results, then you just scrap the whole thing, and then you won't never talk to nobody,
I think
because
that
you're going to look inside of yourself and say, well, they ain't going to believe what I'm saying. They're going to just, so I ain't going to say nothing. I ain't even going to get into it.
I think that what you said was good. You just told her what she knows, and one day if she think about it, she'll come to you ask some questions maybe, but you know, you don't want to beat them over the head with a bat.
That was a seed.
It was
Yeah.
a seed.
That was a seed. Now, once you sit up here and say, well, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, this say right here, blah, blah, blah. But if you make you make yourself be available to a person, that's what I mean. So sometimes people got to be able to see a thing within themselves outside of you saying, oh man, you do this, and that. And then they gonna sit up there and try to figure out, well, you do this, and that. So what's the difference? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So you just plant a seed. Just put a little seed in. That's what you did. Well, you know, I do this. Then one day they'll be like, well, what about this? And then now you can have a conversation.
Yep.
But as soon as it gets to like a fight, now you taking it too far. Like we just have to be able to use wisdom. Part of wisdom is discretion. You kind of got to know when to do whatever. You know what I
I
mean?
think we touched on it too at the beginning. It's like going to the Father for everything and just praying before everything you do. If it seems uncertain, just go to Him and He'll direct you. And if you don't hear anything, maybe it's don't do anything. You know, so that's.
It wasn't the point of meeting. So it wasn't like I knew I was gonna see her to talk about, you know, talk anything to her. It was just like, so it was like, I prayed.
You still,
I mean,
even
I'm
at that
praying.
point, you still have to just pause.
Right.
All right. Well, I think we have talked enough about this for right now. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to continue with our look at the words of the Master and also the weekly Torah portion. So for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Man.
Shabbat Shalom.